the moment, I suppose, that, well, the last 15 years I've been a producer and I suppose engineer and mixer. But before that, I used to be, mainly I was just playing guitar and then a bit of piano. Well, I'd go and do sessions, and some couple of producers just said, "Oh, you should be a producer because you just can't keep your mouth shut. You just play and shut up, But I didn't.
No, you never really went away from the guitar, though. It's always there.
Yeah, I suppose it's just that it was one, from music part, it was the main focus.
It was overriding.
There was a band that I joined in '92, which was called the Lemon Trees, and that was with Guy Chambers. So that was the beginning of getting back into more rock music, or, we were sort of listening to the Beatles and the Stones and all that again. So I'd sort of revisited that after listening to lots of jazz and just doing jazz for a long time. And then, I suppose you could probably get to the Oasis bit. I met somebody who knew them, and he called me one day and said, "Do you know any keyboard players?" And I said, "Sure, loads. What do you need?" And he said to me, "Need somebody to play the string parts." And I was actually writing a documentary at the time for the BBC, and I was playing string parts on a keyboard, and suddenly went, "I need a gig. I need some money." So I auditioned the next day. I said, "Well, all right, let me try." And I auditioned, and in 5 minutes I got the job.
Fantastic.
So I went on tour with them for 6 months, playing keyboards. And then they found out that I played guitar. And then at that time I just started recording a record. It was sort of really, my first production was for a jazz artist called Claire Martin. And Noel got to hear a little bit of it. I think I was wearing some headphones around, just wandering around the hotel, and I had something on, and he just said, "What are you listening to?" And I said, "This." And it was something I'd recorded in my bedroom, and he said, "Oh, I like this." So when the tour finished, he just called me a week later and said, "I'm going in the studio." And that was it. From then on, we just started working, and have done on and off for 15 years.
Wow.
And through him, he introduced me to the Black Crowes. And then I went and met Chris, Chris Robinson, the singer. One day in Paris, he just called me up one day and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." And he said, "I'm in Paris." And I said, "Good." And he said, "Why didn't you come over and see us?" I said, "When?" He went, "Well, now." So I got straight on a train and went and met him, and I've had a relationship with them for 10 years. Got offered to work with the guys from Crowded House, which is how we met. And of course we have the story, which I don't know. Should I tell it? the pedalboard story.
Yeah, please.
The pedalboard story. Well, Dan came to a gig and said, "Look at that massive pedalboard." It was a huge pedalboard, and he said, "I can make you a smaller one." I can, make it smaller and quieter. And I just never forget the day that you came up. I knew that you'd put your heart and soul into it. This absolutely huge pedal board. You were just holding it, and it was really heavy. And I looked at this thing coming up through my drive and going, oh, this looks twice the size of the pedal board that I own already. And we opened it up, and sure enough, it was twice the size. We plugged it in.
It was interesting because
this was really early on as well, because it was your first gig rig, wasn't it? It was the white pedal.
And the first Pro 14.
So of course, I saw this thing with you where I said to you,
said, "Nope, that's not ever going to work." Back out the door.
That's one of the things about being a producer as well, is that you just have to cut straight to that you don't like something or that it's not going to work as soon as you can, because and I saw the plug being pulled out of you, and you going, and I felt really bad, because I knew that you'd done everything. But that is really the point, and that's kind of the point of playing and producing and anything in the arts for me, is that you don't give up. Well, that's what I always thought about you, because then you went away with this pedal board and redid it, and then it was workable and it was great. But then you didn't stop there. You then came back again and said, let me get that gig rig off. And I said, and I don't like this white one. Guitarists don't like these kind of things. It's going to get dirty and everything. Can you make me I think it should be black, and sure enough, you did it.
Yep.
And but also the sonic quality of it improved as well. But not as good as your G2, because the G2 is such a. I mean, it's a step up from. It's not only a step up. It sounds right to me. It sounds really good.
The interesting thing that we learnt with G2, because there's no loading of the signals. Now, even when you have relays in line. And they do a fantastic job. If you put all your pedals in line, you've got the load of the switches, the load of the patch cables, and you have this tone suck. If you have a really good switching system that has relays in there, it will go a long way to diminishing that.
Yeah.
It won't get rid of it completely.
No.
What we've done with G2, the guitar signal goes in, and if nothing is selected, it goes directly out. There's no other switches involved. So there's no loading of the signal. And that's the difference.
Yes.
And when you select two pedals, it is then routed out, but only to those two pedals. So it doesn't go, there's no other unused relays in the signal path.
Exactly.
And so this is the thing that most guitar players who've used G2, they said, well, I was expecting the great switching and I was expecting all these functions, but what I did not expect was the tonal improvement.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The tonal improvement is very noticeable. The other one, worked very well.
Yeah, it works great, and still works great for a lot of people.
It worked very well, but immediately getting this one, I just went, oh, okay, that is the closest I've had to plugging into an amp and then plugging one pedal in.
One of the things that I've always loved about your playing, and why I always come and see you play at any opportunity I get, is you have this wonderful there's a sensation when you listen to you play that you are completely exposed, you know, and completely in the moment. You're not hiding behind a bunch of licks that you've learnt. It is purely about the moment.
When it's working, is what I'm doing is I'm running off the end of a board, of diving board, and I'm just going, you know, out. And you've got to make it completely yours because it's like, I mean, it's like when you're talking and you're waffling on, you know, you can either just say a bunch of phrases that everybody else says and you learn a new word and you go, oh, that's a cool word, but you don't know what it means.
Of course.
And then finally you get to know what it means, and then you start to use it expressively as a way of communicating. So it's the same with music, is you just learn these things, you prepare, and then for me, I have to pretend I don't know anything and just dive. And the only time I'm really not happy with my playing is when I can hear that I'm using using knowledge that I've learnt to help me.
Right.
Whereas what I'd rather have is that I've jumped out there, taken a risk, and then the knowledge comes to pick me up when I need it to get me from A to B, which it does need to be. It needs to be there, but you're playing like you don't know how to.
Yeah.
Which means that you make mistakes, which means you have to be happy to slip and fall over, which means it doesn't sound perfect. But that's what I like.
The very first gig rig, the Pro 14, that was designed as a way to help me use all my vintage effects pedals. But it was then working, you know, first of all, really working with you, because someone with your ear, but also your knowledge of effects and the experience. But you know, you brought so much of that without the conversations that we've had over the years. Really led me to think there's, you know, I'm sure we can do better. And yeah, so I had the idea for G2 where Dave and I sat down and said, right, I know we can do better.
Yeah.
You can go from germanium transistor troll booster to the line level effects, and everything just works together.
Well, I remember because when I had, ages ago when I started buying fuzz pedals again, I bought for 20 quid each a duo fuzz, and I bought a big muff, and then a fuzz face, BC 109 actually, sort of 71 or something like that. But actually, when I put all three in line, it actually didn't ruin the clean sound. It actually made the clean sound really amazing, like a certain thing, but it wasn't anything like
plugging in.
And I was kind of going, well, I really like this plugged in sound, but I also like it going through these three pedals. But none of the switches, I think even, I would dare to say, even the Pro 14 the G2 actually does that now, where you can actually get the sound of three pedals off, you know, because they're switched off. I know it's a bit boring to talk about, but it's something for me because it was actually quite a particular sound that I really liked, and I was thinking, how do I get this and then get rid of it as well? You know, if you're playing with one guitar in a loud rock band, let's say, you can just have a really loud system, you know, and I use a high watt and a Laney supergroup. That's my favorite combination, those two together, and I always like to use two amps at once. But that's too loud for a lot of places. So, you know, I've been trying to find pedals that will do what I want. And that's where, because I don't want to have to think about it. I've been using smaller combos that have got enough headroom and then using the pedals to
reduce
decimate the transients. Well, but I don't like a compressed sound anyway.
No.
I don't like. I still want to hear the attack of the note, but then I want the sustain to come through straight afterwards. That's always what I'm looking for. And then sometimes I want the attack gone, and then sometimes I want it to be, you know, for a cleaner sound, I want it to be really a transient. So it's a tall order to try and get that from one amp, but that's what I'm finding with the G2 is that I just switch something on, and it's now the transients sound correct to me, like what the pedal's doing, rather than just this is just hanging in there and doing a compromised job.
Yeah.
You know, a compromised sort of like straight sound with no pedals on. It doesn't sound compromised anymore. So, well done, mate. Brilliant. The thoughts of ever going back to any sort of, which I was thinking about, is going back to some more rack-like devices is not necessary anymore. Then Sierra Nevada.
The Sierra Nevada.